Now, I'm sure if you're like me, alt season is probably feeling further away than ever before. And so I want to talk a little bit about kind of why that is, how we got here, and some of the key things that really kind of have to happen in order for us to see an alt season, at least in my opinion, and also based on kind of some of the charts and the data and the stats and a lot of the things that we've seen in the past. I think we've got some pretty good direction here. I actually used a really, really cool new AI agent tool to come up with a very comprehensive kind of look at the crypto space in 2025, and some of the most important things that it kind of noted is what was needing to happen for crypto to see a little bit of a comeback. And also it had more of a bearish case of what would probably happen for us to see a little bit of a crypto collapse as well. So if you are interested, stick around. We've got a lot of really, really information going on today. First off though, let's take just a quick look at the crypto bubbles. We can see still another green day in the market, which is pretty interesting. We can see, kind of a couple big ones, but overall the market's just kind of up a little bit. But then also we do have some reds here and there, but overall we can see definitely a lot more green than red. However, still very, very red on the week. Story Protocol is kind of the only one that's up a decent amount. Celestia is also looking pretty decent as well, but otherwise, I mean, nothing really too crazy going on here. So a lot of what we can see though is that over the past several weeks, things have obviously gotten very bearish. Bitcoin and all alts, everything, basically things have come down very, very dramatically. And what we can see is we're actually starting to see that the M2 money supply is actually starting to really start to move up. This is obviously a 3-month lead, but we can see obviously money supply has been coming down basically ever since December, but now it's starting to come right back up. And so if we kind of tend to follow like we usually do, I mean, as it's easy to see, Bitcoin usually follows very, very closely with M2 money supply. We actually saw a bigger peak here than what we really saw out of Bitcoin, which is a little bit surprising. But again, as it's come down, we've seen it follow. And so now that we have this kind of 3-month lead showing us that we might be climbing back up, I do think there is that possibility that we see Bitcoin can kind of continue to follow that. That would put us between, it looks like about 106K for Bitcoin based on kind of what we're seeing here. So we'll have to see. I mean, M2 is one that is usually kind of tracked pretty closely for crypto, and so this is one that we'll want to kind of keep a close eye on. Again, whenever there's a lot of people kind of looking at the same thing, it can still be kind of a useful indicator, but there's usually going to be kind of something on top of that as well that we want to be kind of taking a closer look at. Obviously, kind of what I'm getting at here for kind of wrapping this back to alt season is we need to see Bitcoin lead the way first, right? I mean, we're probably not going to have an alt season unless we see something happen out of Bitcoin first. So that's kind of the first step. We're going to go over a couple of different things that we could kind of see that prove that like we probably haven't seen the most or kind of seen everything out of Bitcoin yet. And then, as I mentioned, we do have that bit at the end where we're going to be going about some of the exact specific economic conditions that could kind of push the market in each of these various directions. So the next thing that I want to take a quick look at here is we can see the Bitcoin Rainbow Price Chart Indicator. If we look, I'm actually going to zoom this in for the whole screen, so it should be easier to see. All right, perfect. I think this is looking pretty good. So what we can see is basically in the first 2013 bull run, we saw both runs up essentially go out of maximum bubble territory. And then I think momentarily here, we might have actually seen this come out of maximum bubble territory. Maybe not quite. If we didn't, we got very, very close. And then obviously coming way back down into like the fire sale, also coming down to fire sell down here. And then actually we saw us get up into about the like sell, or no, probably FOMO intensifies, I think is what that shade of orange is. We got up into about FOMO intensifies, and then we started to come back down. We did not get up into sell, seriously sell, or maximum bubble territory. And then we did actually drop below the fire sale for Bitcoin. Obviously you can see the fire sale is about 25K. Bitcoin is about 16 to 18K, kind of in this range overall. And now we've kind of been really kind of moving back up, but not really ever getting anywhere past accumulate. If you look here, we can see Bitcoin price, even at its peak, and we'll actually zoom in quite closely here just so we can kind of track this. We can see, at this point in time, we got maybe above accumulate into like the still cheap territory. It looks like we're very much on the bubble there, but I mean, we haven't gotten into like if we did get into still cheap, it's only just barely. We never really got into hold. We still haven't been into is this a bubble? We haven't been into FOMO intensifies. We haven't been into any of this stuff. We've seen this a couple of different ways. Also, we looked at the price temperature chart a couple of days back and kind of saw something similar there, where we haven't seen that kind of same explosive pop that we've seen from Bitcoin in the past. And that's not to say that we may not. But what I'm saying is, something is different from last time, right? Whether it's the pace at which we do start to see a little bit of this pop, or maybe we just don't see that kind of really dramatic kind of jump in one place. It's just kind of more of a slow bleed up. It's really, really hard to say. I do think kind of how governments kind of adopt or kind of take the stance of adopting crypto and Bitcoin more specifically, and this is probably that could be kind of that major catalyst that really rockets the price of Bitcoin if there becomes kind of like a full-on scramble to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. That is, I think, where we'd probably see that. Otherwise, it's probably just going to be a slow bleed up over time. I don't think we're going to see any like ridiculous parabolic run out of Bitcoin, just because, generally, I could always be wrong, right? But generally, institutions don't usually do too much of that. Obviously, they can play a part in it, but I wouldn't expect that they would be the ones kind of driving that bus, so to speak. So now, before we move on to the next thing, we're going to go take a look at Bitcoin price. But before we do that, I did just want to let you guys know that I did just recently open a Discord channel. If you guys are interested, it's running through Patreon, just because Patreon is kind of usually the easiest way to manage this type of stuff. It's $2 a month if you guys are interested. I'm trying to make it very, very minimal, so anybody that wants to join is totally welcome to, but I'm trying to also keep the bots out. Usually when you do kind of free Discords and things like that, it's the bots get pretty unwieldy and a lot of that type of stuff, and I just don't really want to deal with fighting off the horde of bots currently. So this is the route that I took. If you are interested, I've got the link in the description below. You can go ahead, get signed up, hang out with me, hang out with kind of the community that I'm trying to build. We'll talk about, various random things. I'll share my opinions. If you have any questions for me, you can kind of ask those more one-on-one, things like that. Any of that type of stuff, if you are interested, that would be a great way to do so. But anyway, like I said, I'm moving on. I want to kind of get back into Bitcoin price. We can see here I do have that low leverage Bitcoin trade open still. I was getting into it kind of before we saw this really strong like sell-off here. This is why you do take low leverage if you do leverage trade, just because what we're seeing out of Bitcoin is unlikely that we would actually see a liquidation out of this. And so that's kind of how we're looking at it, at least for right now. Obviously, I can withstand some red days for a while. And what we can see is it appears that we have probably found a bottom here at this about 76,500 range. Maybe we're starting to come back. Maybe we're starting to consolidate in this range. It's very hard to say for sure. We can see that, we were way oversold on the daily for Bitcoin back here kind of at the end of February. This does not often happen. You can see the last time we hit oversold Bitcoin, it actually dropped below $50,000. So this is a pretty impressive milestone, or a pretty significant milestone, I guess I should say, when we actually do hit oversold here. And then usually, we did see when Bitcoin hit the like Pico bottom here, and it marked oversold. This was kind of the bottom, and it was almost up only from here. We did see a couple other oversold bits here where we hadn't quite hit the bottom yet. So, it can still go lower even after it's been into oversold, but it's usually not very common for that to happen. We'll have to see what happens here. Obviously, it went oversold, and then we saw a pretty strong bounce. This was kind of like that digital asset reserve news, and then it came right back down. A decent bit of manipulation there in the market, if you ask me. But that's kind of what we've seen out of Bitcoin. We can see, if we zoom in a little bit closer here, we are kind of towards the bottom half of this Bollinger Band, not pushing the bottom like we had been kind of previously. So we are kind of back in here. So, price pretty flexible in terms of which direction it could go. We could see it come back down to this level of support. We can maybe see it push up. I do think that this kind of low 90s is going to be a point of resistance, just because it held up as such a strong support for such a long period of time. So I do think if we get back to this level, it is going to cause some trouble to actually go back and try to break through it. As I was kind of mentioning earlier, I do have a low leverage trade open here. You can also trade no leverage too, and I would strongly recommend, if you are not intermediate plus in crypto, crypto, I would say that you should probably not be doing leverage trading at all. It can be very, very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But if you are interested in trading leverage or spot or whatever, anything like that, I do have that link in the description below to BTCC. 10% bonus on first-time deposits if you are interested, which is a really, really good deal, as well as extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user and no VPN or KYC necessary. So if that is something that you're interested in, just feel free to check the description or check the link in the description below, and we'll just go on ahead and get signed up and started trading. Also, if you're not looking to trade real cash, you can see I'm actually working with a demo trading account right now, so you can work to kind of figure out like what your style is, what works for you, what doesn't, a lot of that type of stuff. Play with fake money before you start playing with real money would kind of be my recommendation there if you are interested. But like I said, link in the description below. So now I want to go and I want to talk about kind of the last really important thing that I went over earlier, actually in a Twitter post today, but I want to kind of go over it in a video specifically, just because I do think what we got out of this was really pretty impressive. There's this new AI app around called Manus. It's an AI agent app, and it's very, very impressive in terms of how it works, the type of stuff that it does, a lot of things like that. It's very much kind of like a deep research that you can see out of like Google or ChatGPT or even Grok, I think, has that ability now. But it's very interesting in terms of how it thinks about things, how it solves some of these problems. I've been pretty impressed. And so anyway, one of the prompts that I gave it was, can you give me a recap of crypto thus far in 2025? How did we get here? Why are we here? What are some potential things that could be impacting crypto through the rest of the year? And what would your general kind of outlook for 2025 be? And so it actually took 30 minutes for this AI agent to go through and kind of do all of this stuff. We can see here over 30 minutes, and the report that it provided me was over 28 pages long, which is really, really crazy. I was pretty shocked by the level of detail and the level of information that they had kind of come up with, or the AI agent had come up with in this post. So I was pretty impressed with that. And one of the things that it did is it essentially found like a bear base and bull case going through the rest of 2025. So I want to go through each of those specifically, because as I said, there are particular macro factors that you can go through and kind of attribute to each particular outcome. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So, and again, this is all per the AI agent. This is not my opinion. This is not investment advice. This is not future telling. This is just kind of running an interesting experiment using an AI agent that went through, gathered a whole bunch of financial, crypto, macro, economic, all this different type of stuff data, and kind of put together an outcome or get an estimate based on kind of the information and data that it collected. So what it did is it came up with price targets for Bitcoin, the crypto market cap, and then also the probability of each scenario happening. So the first one we've got the bullish scenario. It attributed actually a 40% probability to this happening, which I thought was pretty interesting. Bitcoin would be at 150K, and the crypto market cap would be about 5.8 trillion. Pretty decent overall. I think this is just less than a 3x from where we're currently at on the crypto market cap. Actually, might even be just less than a 2x. I can't remember exactly where we are for total crypto market cap, at least recently. There's been a bunch of bleeding off, so we'll have to see. But first thing we can see, if liquidity floods back into risk assets, think aggressive Fed rate cuts, Bitcoin could soar. So I think that's kind of the first thing that would need to happen here, right? We would need to have people being happy putting their money into risk on assets again. The biggest thing would be kind of increase in liquidity, increase in sentiment in the overall market, increase of free money or like spendable money that people have. So obviously the economy doing very, very well would be good. And then obviously, low interest rates would be another one that kind of pushes people into more risky assets by default. The second thing would be spot Bitcoin ETFs keep attracting billions, fueling institutional FOMO. We've kind of seen this kind of continue along so far. I think if this kind of continues to ramp up, this is something that we could see a lot of. Regulatory clarity unlocks trillions in sideline capital. Again, this is one of the things we've really been hammering pretty hard with this new administration. Obviously, price movement has not been particularly awesome with the new administration, but the regulatory clarity is massively important, and that, of course, would be kind of a pivotal piece in if we did see this bullish scenario come around. The last thing is more countries embrace Bitcoin as legal tender, driving mainstream adoption. This is the other thing that I've kind of mentioned about, like, if we kind of get the particularly adversarial governments in kind of these bidding wars of who can acquire the most Bitcoin the quickest. That is going to be something that will be massively bullish for the price of Bitcoin, just in everybody overall, because there is going to be kind of a race to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. Now, moving on to the second case, we've got this base case going on. We've got about a 30% probability of this happening. Bitcoin getting to 110K, which is still an all-time high. So, we still could see an all-time high happening this year with the base case, but obviously nothing too special here. I mean, no like eye-watering gains to speak of here. Same thing with the crypto market cap, 3.8 trillion. I think this is about a 50% gain roughly from about where we are, maybe a little bit more than that. But what we could see here, obviously, first thing, a steady grind higher, but no explosive rally. The Fed would keep rates stable, no major cuts, also no hikes, probably nothing going on with like quantitative easing. Quantitative tightening likely stops as well. Institutional adoption continues, but without a full-blown mania phase. So this is kind of what particularly Tyler Hill and I have talked about specifically kind of at length, is if we have kind of this institutional cycle. If we were to see this institutional cycle, this is probably kind of what this would look like. And also crypto fundamentals stay strong, but the macro uncertainty keeps things in check. So this is kind of what we're seeing right now, right? I mean, we're seeing some very, very bullish things coming out from like a pure macro perspective in crypto. But what we are also seeing is massive global uncertainty, particularly with regards to tariffs and kind of recessionary risks, things like that. Those are kind of dampening a lot of the positive news that we're seeing from like a regulatory side, fundamental side, a lot of that type of stuff. So that's kind of what we're seeing there. The third bearish scenario that we would see, and again, a 30% probability is assigned to this. So again, kind of TLDR is basically, it's weighting the fact that the bullish scenario is the most likely of the three, but they're all almost equally likely. What we could see here in a bearish scenario is Bitcoin of 45K, which would kind of suck, and then a crypto market cap of 1.2 trillion. This is very, very small. I mean, this would be almost a complete capitulation of almost all of the altcoins. This would be a really kind of a pretty brutal beatdown. We're going to go into kind of what would happen here. Obviously, a macro recession forces investors to de-risk, hammering crypto, because as we talk about, crypto is kind of like the higher beta play. So if things are kind of selling off, we can expect it to impact crypto the most dramatically of anything else. We could also see a possibility. I don't really think this will happen, just kind of given the administration that we have, but it is a possibility always that regulators tighten the noose on exchanges and DeFi, scaring off big players. And then also we have a major crypto native black swan event. Think about like like Bybit, but like maybe worse because it happens to Binance or something, stablecoin depeg, USDT finally like actually falling victim to the FUD and depegging, stuff like that. That would be all something that would like be very, very damaging. And then also inflation continues and interest rates rise. Due to this, traditional markets offer safer yields, pulling liquidity away from Bitcoin and crypto. This is one that I think is kind of this would have to be this and something, right? I mean, just this is kind of what we've seen a little bit over the past couple of years, and crypto has done generally okay. It hasn't done great, but it's done generally okay while we've seen something like this. I think if this were to be the main driving factor, we'd really need to see inflation really go pretty high and interest rates really go pretty high, which ultimately, in my opinion, would kind of force this like more recessionary environment, which would kind of cause some of those problems. So now to kind of wrap this all up, we'll go to the probability breakdown. Here we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but the 40% assumes macro plus adoption tailwinds align for a breakout. The base is essentially reflecting steady but unspectacular growth. And then the bear case assumes these risk scenarios backfiring or not going as intended, but avoids a full-on collapse of crypto. Now, again, looking at some of these numbers, you can decide how full-on, what type of full-on a collapse we were avoiding. 1.2 trillion for crypto. Obviously, still very large asset class, but really, really down from what we're seeing right now. So overall, that's kind of like the main things that I think we would need to see in order to see an alt season. There's obviously a lot of various things going on. A lot of macroeconomic, fundamental, technical, all these types of factors are swirling around right now. So it's really, really hard to know exactly, If something breaks, what will it be? A lot of that type of stuff. And so something that we just need to think about a little bit as we're kind of going through and preparing for 2025. I do think that's why we've seen a lot of people selling off, is just to essentially de-risk from the market overall. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, a like and a subscribe really does help me out a lot. Also, if you have any like comments, thoughts, feelings, questions, whatever, drop those in the comment section below. I do read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do so. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.